Pastor Robert, his emphasis was based on this. He may not have quoted it directly, but we need as a church to focus really on soul winning. I mentioned the other day also that every department, whatever contribution you are making, including development, it should be geared towards being or making disciples of Jesus Christ, who live as his loving witnesses and proclaim to all people the everlasting gospel of the three angels' messages in preparation for his soon return. That is with reference to the book of Matthew chapter 28, verse 18 to 20. It is also what we have in the book of Acts chapter 1, verse 8, which our guest speaker for the 10 days of prayer really emphasized on. But again, formatively, the Adventist Church is embedded in the book of Revelation chapter 14, verse 6 to 12. We are highly indebted to the writings of the book of Revelation chapter 14, verse 6 to 12 as an Adventist Church. Thank you. Thank you so much for your efforts. We are here. You can now read it. Maybe just the other screen, if you will manage, it will be okay. That is our mission. And then we have a method. We have a method. Let me put full screen now. We have a method. Okay. I think because of time, let's just... Okay, it's now okay. Thank you. Thank you so much. So there is our mission. Like I said, I will try to make sure you have even hard copies. We will have it in our walls circulating so that we seriously embrace it even as we begin the year. Make disciples of Jesus Christ who live as his loving witnesses and proclaim to all the people the everlasting gospel of the three angels' messages in preparation for his soon return. Our method, how do we do this? Guided by the Bible and the Holy Spirit, Seventh-day Adventists pursue the mission of making disciples through Christ-like living, Christ-like healing, Christ-like serving, Christ-like proclaiming. The word proclaiming sometimes is used interchangeably with communicating. Christ-like teaching, Christ-like training. You get the facts? Those are the methods that we will use. You don't have to write it. I just want you to look at it with understanding. You will have them in your hands quite soon. Our vision, if you ask the Adventist Church to close their eyes and look into the future, close their eyes and look into the future, what are we looking at? We are looking at, in harmony with Bible revelation, Seventh-day Adventists see as the climax of God's plan the restoration of all his creation to full harmony with his perfect will and righteousness. That is what we are looking into. That is what we are waiting for. We are here, but we are not here to stay. We are here looking forward to God's climax, his plan of restoration of all his creation into full harmony with his perfect will and righteousness. And that is in harmony with Bible revelation. Now, if you are a leader in the Adventist Church, or even if you are a member, you need to have some basic reference materials. But now let me speak to leaders. You need to have your reference materials if you are a leader in the Adventist Church, first and foremost, our textbook is the Bible. That is our textbook. That is the rule of faith. If you are a leader and you do not have a Bible, you have missed it. And there are people who also have Bibles, but they rarely use the Bibles. They rarely read even for themselves, let alone reading with others. There are leaders who may have a Bible and don't read it. Our reference, our textbook is the Bible. The Bible. That is our primary textbook. We have some other supporting documents. We have the Spirit of Prophecy, and there are several books of prophecy, including counsels to the church. If you are a leader, you need to have some Spirit of Prophecy materials for references. The Spirit of Prophecy materials are not replacing the Bible. They are simply explaining the Bible. Like I said, the Bible is the primary textbook. And then as a leader, you need to have a church manual. Church manual is for everyone. You are allowed, even if you are not an Adventist, to have a look at it. The church manual is not only for leaders, but every Adventist, you need just to check, how does this church operate? That is quite basic. At other levels of leadership, you may want to have the policies, the East Central Africa Division working policy and things like that. The General Conference working policies. You may, at other levels of leadership, you may want to peruse through all that. But basically, every Adventist leader, you need to have what we call a church manual. It's a policy material. The other thing you need to do when you have been selected or elected to be in charge of a department, you need a handbook. You need a handbook. We have several handbooks. We have Elders Handbook. We have the Sabbath School Handbook. Oh, I have some two materials, though they are not written as handbooks. We have the Sabbath School Handbook, the Personal Ministries Handbook. Even the church clerks have handbooks. If you are a leader in any department, try to have a handbook because it gives you into detail what you are supposed to be doing. The least you can do is to have what we call a job description. I have proposed, because we could not handle all subjects in this program, I've proposed to extract the job descriptions for every department and make a simple, maybe 1 or 2 pages for every leader in the church so that we know what we need to do. Now, something about the church manual, every 5 years there is a revision or an edition of a church manual. Every 5 years. And so, if it is a policy book, it is like a legal document. It can be used even in the court of law. So you need to have the latest edition. If you are going to quote or you're going to have the church manual as a reference material, you need to quote the current or latest edition. The current edition that we have, which is already in the market, you can buy at ABC or any other book depository, is the 21st edition. And that is the color. Which color is that? Is the color coming out in the screen? Which color is that? Someone is saying chocolate. Is it really purple? I don't think. Somewhere chocolate, right? Somewhere there. But what is most important is that thing written down there, 21st edition, revised 2020 5. So after every general conference meeting, we always have a revised edition. Now, when we want to talk about administration, talking about boards and councils, we need to know how our church is organized. Like a government, we need to know how things flow. And we begin with looking at Israel's government. When you look at the Israel government, you realize in the Bible, it is characterized by the most thorough organization. Wonderful for its completeness and its simplicity displayed in the Hebrew economy. The Israelites' government was really organized. And it is God who organized it like that. We learn a lot of things from the Jewish nation. And the Bible, God privileged the Jewish nation to give it to us, including their culture. We are learning so many things about that nation. And the world and the church, the Christian church, is learning so much into the Israelites' history, including its economy, its policies, its governance, everything about it. By the way, lawyers, we could have some in the congregation. Lawyers really need to study the Pentateuch before they graduate. God was the center of authority and government, the center of authority and government, and he was the sovereign of Israel. To the extent that they could not even pronounce his name. They were calling him Yahweh. But that is what we say now, Yahweh. It has vowels. When we pronounce it, it has vowels. But for them, there were no vowels. Y-H-W, that was the name of God. And it's something like you are pronouncing with considerations on your gutturals and labials and many other things. So, yeah, like you get stuck when you want to pronounce, yeah. I mean, the name was so revered that even pronouncing his name was scary. You want to refer to God, but you don't even want, you see, today we can easily call God and call him God. For the children of Israel, pronouncing, yeah, they get stuck. Yahweh. He was the center of authority and government. He was the sovereign of Israel. And when you check the book of Romans chapter 12, verse 4 to 5, says, for us, we have many members in one body. You remember where we began our devotion? For us, we have many members in one body, but all the members do not the same function. Do not the same function. So we being many are one body in Christ and individually members of one another. How did we put it in the morning? Many parts? Yes. Many parts yet one. Born and bonded. We are born in baptism. We are born in the newness of life. We come together. We are bonded after that birth and bonded for mission. And he, Christ, is the head of the body. Look at that organization. Who is the head of the body? Christ. The church, Christ is the head of the church. Who is the beginning, the firstborn from the dead, that in all things he may have the preeminence. You can write down the book of Colossians chapter 1, verse 18. It is a very good organization. As a church, we have our head, and the head is Jesus Christ. Still on Israel's government. Look at Moses. He stood as the visible leader by God's own appointment to administer the laws in his name. He was an administrator. He was the visible head. And then from there, you get elders of the tribes as a council. You'll have the elders' council. A council of how many? 70 was afterward chosen to assist Moses in the general affairs of the nation. So they had a council. And then next came the priests who consulted the Lord in the sanctuary. I've taken this from the book of Patriarchs and Prophets, page 374. But that is simply explaining the organization that we have in the Bible. After that, we have the chiefs or princes who ruled over tribes. Under these were also captains over thousands, and captains over hundreds, and captains over 50s, and captains over tens, and lastly, officers who might be employed for special duties. Did you get that? Special what? Duties. In my discussion, you will find where to place them. These are now committees. They are now committees. They are officers in charge of special duties. Like in our church, you can have a committee, camp meeting committee, development committee. But now, when you have leaders in charge of hundreds, captains over 50s, and captains over 10s, and lastly officers, you will now have the elders in charge of estates, the estate leaders, you have smaller cell groups and things, the coordinators. That is how the government of God was organized. And we are not doing something strange when we organize our church in that direction. He showed the same perfection in its organization in the New Testament. When you come to the New Testament, you find a good perfection in its organization. But still, Christ himself, who formed the church, is the head. That is what we have known. He is the head. You can read Matthew chapter 16, verse 18 onwards. He set the members, each one of them, in the body just as he pleased. So he calls each one of us as he pleases. And then he sets us into duty. We need to be functional. He endowed them with gifts, endowed them with talents, adequate for the function or the functions that they have been called upon to do, and organized them into a living, working body of which he is the head. That is what Christ has done in the Christian church and now in our church. Now, let me also break it down. There are common forms of church governance in our time, and this is generally to do with Christendom or Christianity. We have episcopal. I will not take time on this. We have episcopal, where authority rests with ordained clergy, specifically bishops or overseers of regional dioceses or something like that. That's where we have the Orthodox, the Anglican, the Roman. But the Catholic has more detail into this episcopal kind of thing. Sometimes we call it papal polity. It's a specific, highly centralized, hierarchical form of the episcopal model. There, if you can't even interpret the Bible, he will do the interpretation. And when he has done the interpretation, that is it. He has spoken. They also have their creeds, teachings, and whatever. Anytime they conflict with the Bible, their creeds will take precedence. The Bible will go under. That's how they operate. But even so, when the Pope says it, that is it. That is it. It is law. Then we have the Presbyterian and the Congregational, and we also have people who are doing the hybrid. You may not really need this for now. Now, the leadership structure of the Seventh-day Adventist Church is representative. We have a representative form of church government. That's what we have. Christ is recognized as the head of the church, which is biblical. With reference to the book of Ephesians chapter 1 verse 22, you read down to verse 23. Christ is the head. In this representation, Christ is the head. And then authority is exercised through representative bodies, not by individuals. Are we together? Not by individuals. Authority is not exercised by individuals. Authority is exercised through representative bodies, not individuals. Not individuals acting independently. And then members are also expected to participate in decision making through duly appointed leaders and constituencies. We don't just come up and say, okay, we are Adventists, let's make a decision. It is through representation, and the representation of the individuals, they are not acting independently. They work with some committees and come up with decisions, and these people are appointed or elected by the church that they are going to represent. Are we together? That's why we do church elections, so that we have representatives, and they are elected by the church. Perhaps that informs why every time we are doing any elections, we need to have the membership. If it is the church, we need to have the members in regular standing. If you are going to be a leader in Migori Central Church, you need to be a member of Migori Central Church. Then from that membership, we get the leadership. They are going to represent the membership. Okay? All right. Now, our church globally is organized into 4 levels. We need to know this. It is organized into 4 levels. The first level is the local church. That is where we are, Migori Central Church. This is a local church. From this local church, the other level is the local field. That is Southwest Nyanza Field. That is the other level. And perhaps I need to go through these notes before I turn and forget them. When you talk about the local church, you need to know that it has authority. The local church has authority, and this authority is exercised through church boards and church business meeting. We don't go out there and say we have decided this. No. There is a meeting which is duly called, and members attend, and then they agree, and then that is it. You say the church has spoken. So we exercise authority through the church business meeting and the church board. The word "and," I will take care of it. They are not two parallel. One is reporting to the other one. Which one is it? Which one is it? The church board is reporting to the business meeting. Okay, now the second level I talked about, the other level I talked about is the local fields. It's a group of local churches within a defined territory. We have so many churches. I don't know if, the last time I knew about these records, there were 400 and something. I don't know. Someone tells me they are close to 5 something. It's a group of local churches within a defined territory, like now Southwest Nyanza Field, and maybe you talk about Ranen, maybe you talk about East, how do you call it? Southeast Nyanza fields, and all those other ones. Those territories, we call them local, either fields, or call them local conference, or we call them local mission. And they oversee pastoral assignments. They also see church planting. They also see the mission work. Now, the other part is the union. From the local fields, you get to the union. The union is composed of conferences and fields or mission fields, and they have a duty to perform, which is basically mission, and also overseeing institutions. Now, from the union, where do you go to? Yeah, many people want to say it is the division. No. From there, you go to the general conference. General conference. What we have as a division, there are branches of management. The general conference is now a global thing, but it has segmented the whole globe into certain regions for ease of management. We call it the general conference. And it acts through its session executive committee. They have an executive committee that also represents the church globally. Now, let's come back to the church business meeting. Let's come back to the church business meeting. We need to know this, how things work. Point number one, it is the highest authority in the local church. That is the highest. We don't have any higher authority in the local church than the business meeting. That is the highest in the local church. And the membership of that meeting or that committee, whatever it is, all baptized church members in regular standing. What do you mean by regular standing? You can be a member, but a Sabbath school member. You can be a member and also a regular member. What we mean by a Sabbath school member, you are visiting. In short, you are visiting. Or rather, you are not enrolled into the membership of that group. You can also be a Sabbath school because you have been removed from the membership of that group. So you are considered a Sabbath school member. Anyone whose membership is regular refers to that person who has the membership in place without challenge or dispute. It is okay. No one is talking about your name. Your name is not under any scrutiny or something like that. You are not removed. You are an active member in regular standing. That is what it means. Now, key duties of the business meeting: elect church officers. Every member will sit down and elect church officers. Again, this happens through representation. You know that? We have a special committee formed by the church, the regular members. The special committee recommends nominating committee to the business meeting. They approve, so they have elected. They have elected the nominating committee. The nominating committee goes, discuss into details. That's a committee. Discusses all those into details. Then they bring here. So you don't say the nominating committee has elected. It is the business meeting that has done what? Elected, once they have approved. So they elect church officers. They also vote on major church decisions, so the church actions. If you want to go and conduct an evangelistic campaign in some unentered area, and it is a proposal maybe from that department, it has been recommended by the church board, and then we need to take an action. The church needs to take an action so that we go over there in that mission. They vote on major church actions. Sometimes you don't have to bring every deliberation from the business meeting. From the church board to the business meeting. Sometimes it's necessary that you pick issues that require decisions, that require actions to present to the business meeting. Otherwise, the other ones would just remain routine, and you would just be discussing modalities of doing them and things like that. But if it is an action that, it's an item that requires action, you bring it to the business meeting. Another thing that we also need to know, that this business meeting admits, transfers, disciplines, or remove members. It has that kind of authority. We will have recommendations. The recommendations may even come from nurture and retention. The recommendations may come from elders, may come from estate leaders or division leaders, or even from individuals, or even from pastors. The recommendations can come, and it is scrutinized at a level, maybe elders' council. From there, it is made to be an item of discussion. It is taken to the church board, and then the church board looks at it, panel beats it, and does everything that is required. Then that proposal is brought to the business meeting, and the people who have the final say in this sense is the business meeting. Are we together? That is it. Okay, another thing they do is approve major financial and property decisions. I don't think that needs a lot of explanation. They approve major. When it comes to issues of finances, especially when you are running a big budget, sometimes you don't have to bring every small detail to the business meeting. Sometimes there are things like recurrent expenditures. Once voted, if there are no changes, if they are voted for 2025, there are no changes in 2026, there are recurrent expenditures, you don't have to keep bringing them to the floor. You don't have to even keep taking them to the board. Those could just be left for the treasurer and the other officers involved in the Treasury Department to dispense what was already an action that had already been agreed on earlier on. But there are some fresh decisions that could be made, or recommendations that need to be made. Those ones are brought to the business meeting. They also receive reports from church officers and boards. It simply means all departmental leaders, they report finally to the business meeting. But they don't do that directly. They go through the what? Through the church board. Okay? The chairperson of the board, now let's go to the church board. The church board is the primary administrative council of the local church. The primary administrative council of the church. That is the church board. The chairperson is the pastor, and sometimes can delegate to elder. The same thing happens to the business meeting. The pastor chairs the business meeting, sometimes delegates to an elder. And permit me also to say there are certain agendas that will require that the pastor must preside. Did I say must? Yes, I carefully selected my words. Must do what? Preside. Especially the item of membership. The pastor must do what? Preside. So at the church board level, the pastor, or when it is delegated to an elder, they need to know there are members. We have the elders, there are members, the church clerk, of course, because he will take the minutes, and the church treasurer, and all departmental leaders. All departmental leaders are members of the church board, including deacons, including Sabbath school, youth, women ministries, and the rest. They are representing a category of people. They need to be there from their councils. Then also other members that have been voted by the church. So you can find in a church you have the elected leaders in charge of departments, they could sum up to maybe 28 or even 32, but at the discretion, at the recommendation of the nominating committee, we can go up to 40. We can even go up to 50. So there are people that are board members without necessarily being leaders of any department. Are we together? Yes, because their contribution could be needed, or sometimes it's just by nature of the size of the church. If you go by heads of departments alone and include the elders and the pastor and the clerk and the treasurer, you still have a small number. You're looking at a threshold. You want to spread representation as much as possible so that you have a threshold. When you are making a decision, they are not limited in terms of knowledge on the scope of their work. So you can bring other people on board. Sometimes you can bring people because of their technical know-how or some other considerations. Okay, key duties of the church board. They carry out decisions. Let me begin from, they recommend matters to the church in business session. They make recommendations. The church board does not make a decision and go with it or run away with it. They don't sit, decide, and go with it. They make recommendations to the business meeting. Then they carry out decisions of the church business meeting. So when they make a recommendation, they bring it here. When the church will say, we have an issue with this name, or we have an issue with this detail, then they have to go back, maybe make a correction or do something, then bring it back. When it's now okay, it is incumbent upon the board to carry out the decision that has been made by the church in a business meeting, duly called. Provide spiritual and strategic leadership. I want you to take note of those two aspects. Provide spiritual and strategic what? Leadership. Spiritual leadership. Not any other form of leadership. And then there is also the engagement of strategy in leadership. So there is planning and coordinating and every other thing, every other bit of it. They also coordinate evangelism. They coordinate nurture and mission. They oversee church finances and properties so that we run financial operations, but in the long run, they go under the scrutiny of the church board. We have audit department. The audit department will do the nitty-gritties of auditing for those finances. But the auditor or the audit office bring their opinion to the church board. Then the church board will also go through it before it is presented in a business meeting. So in that way, the board oversees the church finances and even properties. Who are the members of the church board? Pastor, all ordained and non-ordained elders. No, did I write this properly? I didn't. I talked about the membership, right? Earlier on. So, okay, I mean the elders council, sorry. I didn't pay attention to the C part of it. Board of elders. We now have councils. We now have councils that sit down and somehow generate items for considerations at other levels of administration. Generate items for the church board that finally go to the business meeting. And the last level of muting or consideration of items that would go to any other level like the church board or business meeting is the elders council. Things will come from every other part of the church, every other department of the church. It must go first to the what? Elders council. Then we see if this should go ahead to the church board. I want to give you an example. Should we find a report from an estate leader that someone has apostatized, or it can come from a nurture and retention, or it can come from any other member that someone has apostatized, it can come. If it comes like that and it is not handled properly, you will go to the church board. You may not be properly informed. You get to the business meeting and you cause damage that you will not repair to the person and sometimes to the church. And so for that item, it needs thorough scrutiny and it needs to go to the elders council. The elders will sit down and see, is this motion really substantial? Have we done everything as a church in our respective lines of work to take care of every detail about it? Are we sure? Are we sure this is true? And it can now be discussed at another level of administration. So the elders will sit down. They will say, I think we need to confirm this area, confirm this, ask this, involve so and so, and things like that. So they can suspend the issue from going to the church board and make sure they are done with it. They are done with it. The moment the elders are done with it, they have done everything they can, then the matter can be taken to the board. Are we together? So when it comes to the board, then the board will make their considerations and then also decide to make recommendations if it has to be done to the business meeting. So members of the council include the pastor, all ordained and non-ordained elders are members of that elders council. Their key duties: plan worship services. This is familiar to all elders. Plan worship services. And we realize something, that sometimes elders are lost in the planning until they miss out in worship programs. I thank God that the issue was addressed, and now when people come here for the song services, we will always find the elders inside. They will find the elders in the Sabbath school discussions. You will find them in the song service. You will find them throughout. And if someone wants the magic of keeping time, it is the elders are seated right there. They are not going elsewhere. And so the elders decided that we are going to have that meeting we used to do in the morning. We're going to do it on Friday night online. And it is saving us. It's saving us a lot. So they plan worship services. Let me say again something. For your own knowledge, for your consumption, procedurally, who is the owner of this pulpit? In literal speaking, for lack of a better word, who should own this pulpit? The pastor. The pastor. The pastor is the one in charge of this pulpit. But because he cannot be there every day, he has to delegate. And the best way of delegation is using our calendar of events. And so we have a flow. There's a way these things move. Nobody comes to preach in this pulpit if the pastor does not know. Nobody. Just to be on the safe side. If I'm the one supposed to preach here, and now I'm not preaching, someone else is preaching, I need to know who is doing what? Preaching. It's just common sense. So, just in matter of pecking order, now that I need to involve others, my immediate assistants are the what? The elders. Elders must know as much as I must know who is preaching here. And how will elders know? They will get to realize that from the elders' council, there are elders supervising every department. Every department. So any organization in the youth department, at least the elder has a clue. If they have planned on their Sabbath to preach themselves or invite somebody, it is not taking that elder by surprise. That is muted into the elders' council, and it is properly planned. If a service request is needed, it is done quite in time administratively. Until now, when that person stands here, all due considerations are done. Okay? So we plan worship services. We provide spiritual nurture and pastoral care. Provide support. The elders' council support the pastor in visitation and discipleship. They safeguard doctrinal faithfulness. They promote unity and spiritual growth. Let me say something about safeguarding doctrinal faithfulness. The buck will always stop with the what? With the leader. In any institution, in any organization, the buck will always stop with the what? With the leader. So, the leader or leaders in this sense of elders' council, we must safeguard doctrinal what? Faithfulness. And it begins with us. We lead from front, not from behind. It will be a big contradiction if we are preaching water and drinking wine. The church will be confused. The church will just be confused. So one of the things that the elders do is they themselves, they must have a safeguard on doctrinal purity or faithfulness. I'm not saying we must have angels as elders. Don't get me wrong. We are not going to have angels for elders. We have human beings as what? Elders. Pastor has not arrived in heaven. I did not go and visit and told you go back and help them. That's not the scenario. I am also on my way to where? To heaven. What we are talking about, we must safeguard what? Doctrinal purity. And it starts with the leadership. I see I have very few minutes remaining. Let me rush and do something here. There are three principles of church governance. With the boards, with the councils. Get these three concepts in the remaining 1 or 2 minutes. 1, consultation. Consult. Seek counsel broadly before you make a decision when you are a leader. Seek counsel broadly before decisions are what? Are made. You need to check. You want to make this decision. Who are you leading? What is happening there? Who are you reporting to? You need to check. Consult. Ask the person you must ask. And you need to know the person to ask. Counsel broadly before decisions are made. Listen to the members. Listen to the boards. Listen to the committees. This will encourage unity, trust, and what? Transparency. Don't be a lone ranger and you still claim to be a leader. A leader must always have followers. A leader must always have the person he is accountable to. That's why you need to consult broadly. So the application here is no major decision should be made without appropriate consultation. It will help you avoid what we call authoritarian leadership. The other C is committees. How do we refer to these committees? The other way of leadership in this church is through committees. The church conducts its work through organized committees. There are systems in place. And these systems, when you are a leader, you need to know you are a representative. And you have a mandate, and you have to give an account. You don't want to make a decision, and then in the long run, if things backfire, your people will tell you, no, we were not consulted, you are on your own. It's very embarrassing. Work with your committees. Don't disregard your committees. They were elected to support you as a leader. The other one is consensus. There are 3 C's. The last one is consensus. Consensus means seeking unity of mind rather than mere majority rule. You saw the other day when we were doing business meeting, there was this part which I said, in favor say aye, and people said aye. Opposed to say nay. Did you get my explanation that day? The church will use the parliamentary system, but there is that bit of minority. We don't just say majority rule. When there is a dissenting voice, that voice must be attended to. And because members of a business meeting are always mature people, even if you're going to remain alone and you seeing what over 1,000 people are not seeing, be honest. Be honest. Be sincere. Be appropriate, even in your language, and make sure when the church is taking an action, there is what we call consensus. I want to stop there. Do we have questions? Let me see. But you will write it. Let me see if we have questions in that area. So teachers say when they don't see nobody has a question or whatever, then maybe the learning is 0 or it is too clear. I'm seeing one. So you write it down. I was just checking to see the amount of work I have after this. Write the question down so that we will give it a referenced response. Shall we stand? Or are you? Okay, let's stand for a closing prayer. Our Heavenly Father, we want to thank you for this church and the organization. We are praying that we are not lost into the systems of this world, but that your church will be handled with the decorum, with the reverence, with the honesty, with accountability. Thank you for this lesson. Now we know the administration of this church. We know how our boards, our councils need to operate. Help us to have a good working relationship, having good results at the end of this year. May your grace be sufficient to us in everything. I pray in Jesus' name. Amen.